The Spinoff Podcast Network.
Are you making the most of your KiwiSaver investment? Generate is an award-winning KiwiSaver provider with a track record of strong long-term performance. Making a smart decision now could add tens of thousands of dollars by the time you reach retirement. Book a no-obligation chat with a Generate KiwiSaver advisor today at generatekiwisaver.co.nz/get-advice. A copy of the product disclosure statement is available at generatekiwisaver.co.nz. The issuer of the scheme is Generate Investment Management Limited, and of course, past performance does not guarantee future returns.
I'm Toby Manhire, and this is Juggernaut, the story of the Fourth Labour Government, a podcast in 6 parts.
Doesn't give my opponents much time to run up to an election, does it?
This nation is at risk.
What do you think you're up to now, you perverted little liar?
I could smell the uranium on it as you lean towards it.
There's a radical overhaul in the history of New Zealand's administration.
Juggernaut, the story of the Fourth Labour Government, made with the support of New Zealand On Air. Listen now on the Spinoff or wherever you get your podcasts. Kia ora tātou, this is Toby Manhire with another episode of your friendly local politics podcast, Gone by Lunchtime. What you're about to hear is part of the Gone by Lunchtime Megapod, a 12-hour epic event recorded on September 20 at Spinoff HQ. Enjoy. Got this incredible group of people with me. Charlotte Muru-Lanning, Shanti, Mathias, Stewart Sowman-Lund. We're going to talk about electorates. We're going to talk about the box office electorates, the hot seats as we've called them in our series. And you all have been reading, writing, thinking, looking at all the issues around these seats. And I'm going to go through first of all. Do we have Joel on the line, by the way? We're going to plug Joel in.
Just carry on and I'll get him in if and when he comes in.
I really want to know if he's read a book. Have you guys read a book? Has anyone read a book?
I've read books.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Two.
I have read a book. At least one.
Okay, let's go through also turnout guesses. Do you want to do your turnout guesses? Everybody gets a turnout guess to go into, just like Chris Hipkins, keen listener Chris Hipkins, you can go in to win a box of chocolate fish. Turnout. Oh, there's Joel. Hi, Joel. If you want to guess anywhere, it's sort of what the turnout might be. It's 82 was really high last time. 74, 75 was 2011. What do you reckon, Charlotte?
76.4.
Just
said with
one-upping the PM.
Such confidence.
Is that what he said?
He said 76, right? So you you just wanted to get a little bit higher.
Yeah.
Interesting. Shanti?
73.3.
Oof.
73.3. Stuart?
I'm going 77.2.
I thought you would.
Yeah. And my argument being, there's so much, so many questions about mojo in this country at the moment. There's going to be a large number of people who want to get out and, demonstrate that.
Okay. Joel, can you hear me? How are you down there in Punaki? Everything well?
It is absolutely wonderful down in Wellington. You're all missing out.
Well, actually, we're not, because we're in a studio for 12 hours, which is doesn't matter what the weather is, because the weather is always shining with interesting politics chat. What's your guess on the turnout for the election on October 4th for 14, Joel?
77.4.
77.4.
That's right.
Very close to Stuart. Okay, let's keep moving around. Do you want political TV shows, Charlotte?
Thick of it.
Thick of it?
Yeah.
Shanti?
I've never watched a TV show.
You've never watched any TV show. You're like Chris Hipkins with his books.
Yeah, that's right. TV.
What's a TV? Amazing. Okay. Have you read any books? You have read books.
I've read books,
heaps.
yeah.
What's your favourite book that has some connection with politics?
Oh, there's a lot of really involved fantasy books
Okay.
that I really like. There's
Okay.
all these machinations.
Not
flaws.
Pull No Punches by Judith Collins.
That's second.
Stuart?
The Thick of It.
Thick of it as well. Joel?
The American version of The Thick of It, Veep.
Oh, nice.
Ooh.
Yeah, nice. I'm too loud? Is that what you're saying, Tina? Apparently I'm too loud. I've just had a Tina Tiller. The core of the Spinoff has been making I'm too loud noises. Maybe she just means I'm too interesting. That might be it. Also, Mojo. Charlotte, 0 to 10?
4. Is it personal or
Yeah, it's personal. Yeah. You said 4 in a way that was so 4. Like everything about it was 4. It was onomatopoeic. Shanti?
7.5.
Oh.
So this is personal. Do we know what mojo is, or it's just whatever we want?
Just answer the question, please.
6.
6. Joel?
I'm at a 9 today, and I've already visited 2 Mojo cafes.
Wow. That is well.
That'll do it.
That is well. And didn't you go and see Andy Foster as well?
Yeah, just spent some time with Andy Foster.
That's 10.
That is, if there is not more of a mojo-inducing encounter than hanging out with our man Andy Foster, New Zealand First candidate. How was he?
He's really chipper, actually. We caught up at Zealandia, which is his That's actually his baby. He was actually really instrumental in setting that up. I think he's quite excited. I think once he left council, was no longer the mayor. He was probably a bit lost, didn't know what to do with himself. So he's running for New Zealand First, and he genuinely seems really happy about life.
Fantastic. Okay, let's start by going through the seats with you, Stewart. I'm going to ask each of you. You've all written about a bunch of seats. Each of you, could you name a seat that is the one that's most exciting you, that's most kind of pushing the mojo levels up when you read about it and think about it and talk about it with your friends, and why? Stewart, you go first.
Tāmaki, because it is a seat that for many years was incredibly boring, incredibly straightforward. Feels like for the first time in my memory, it's a race. It's an exciting race, and I don't really know what way it's going to go. Because
we've got, two candidates on the right?
Yeah, so Simon O'Connor from the National Party, who's been in there for 12 years, I think, last time swooped in with a 8,000 vote majority during the Labour red wave of 2020. This time, ACT Party Deputy Leader Brooke Van Velden, who is campaigning incredibly hard on the street every day to try and unseat Simon O'Connor. And while polling is, quite hard to, there's not much polling out there, but I think there's been a couple that have had them within 2 or 3% of each other within the margin of error, which suggests that...
Have we actually had a published poll, or are we just going on whispers and polls?
There has been polling provided to media outlets. So, as I say, it's hard to know, but
with a sack of salt.
It makes it exciting.
Yeah.
And, from spending a bit of time on the ground, albeit alongside Brooke, so there's a bias there for the piece I wrote, a lot of people suggesting that they were ready for change, ready for someone who was on the ground and accessible, and they didn't feel that they'd had that over the last few years.
Huge majority to turn around. But yes,
for sure.
It'll be interesting. Interesting kind of almost sort of wedge encounter on the right between the two versions of the potential National ACT coalition. Charlotte, what about you? What's the seat that's...
this is a bit personal because it's the seat I'm voting in, but Tāmaki Makaurau.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the Māori seat that kind of encompasses the whole of Auckland, and the competition, or where it's kind of interesting, is between Peeni Henare, who currently holds it for Labour, and the Māori Party, and that's really interesting because last time there was about 4 percentage points between Peeni Henare and John Tamahire, who was running for the Māori Party. And I just think with the last term with Māori Party in Parliament, it will be really interesting to see kind of if that buzz pays off.
Yeah. I mean, they don't have Tamahire, which
is
something, although, he's a polarising figure in his own right.
Yeah.
The other thing, I think, last time is that Marama Davidson was standing in the seat for the Greens and got 20%. So I imagine Peeni Henare will be quietly hoping that comes to him, because you're right. If the swing across the country moves, it was a really small majority there that Peeni Henare got, like 100 or something.
Tiny, it was hundreds. But I think it's also interesting because obviously John Tamahire had that he's well known in Auckland, but also for not necessarily good reasons, but he still did that well.
Depends who you ask.
And he'd just come out of that interesting mayoral campaign the year before.
That's true. But also being involved with the Waipio Trust, and the Trust had done a lot of really good work around COVID vaccination stuff. So, maybe that
helped balance it out. But now they've got Takutai Moana Kemp, who's really well established out in South Auckland, and also did lots of great work around COVID as CEO of Manurewa Marae. So yeah, it's just really interesting. And I don't know who I'm going to vote for out of the four.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Love that. Joel, what's squealing your wheels in Wellington?
Well, I am going to talk Wellington, and I think it's the most exciting electorate in the country, and it's Wellington Central. And the reason is, we just had a poll out this week, and it showed 3 candidates all within 5% of each other. And there's ways you could see it going any way. But the reason that it's interesting is the Green candidate, Tamitha Paul. She has a really good chance to do effectively what Chloe Swarbrick managed to do. They've actually had very similar political careers in the sense that she ran for local government. In Tam's case, she won a seat on council and became sort of extraordinarily popular among young people on the left, to the point that when Grant Robertson decided he wasn't going to run again in this seat, James Shaw was the sort of incumbent Green candidate, and he stood aside for Tam because he thought that she had a better chance of winning this seat for the Greens. Sort of as someone who's never been an MP and is 26 years old. So, I mean, there's an extraordinary level of excitement from the Green side, but it's also fascinating because I just think all 3 of the candidates are really high quality and almost speak to the future of their own parties. Tam is, like I said, she's this young sort of firebrand activist-y type. Ibrahim Omer from Labour has probably the best story of any politician, any candidate in the country. He was a refugee who fled Eritrea as a teenager, worked as a UN translator in Sudan, spent 5 months in prison there after he was accused of being a spy, ended up in New Zealand as a refugee, spent years working as a cleaner, picking up any jobs he could. He was a cleaner at Victoria University for years until he saved up enough money to attend Victoria University. And now he's an MP, and he's had a really big impact, particularly after the mosque shootings. He's that one person in the Labour caucus who's incredibly important in connecting with certain migrant communities. So I mean, he's interesting in terms of looking at that modern Labour Party. He's sort of genuinely, he's an actual working class representative, and he speaks to that sort of diversity and migrant voice. And then even Scott Sheeran on national side, he's too far down the list to get in this time probably. So he would need to win the seat, which I don't really expect him to do so, but he's an incredibly impressive candidate.
Well, he's coming second in that poll though, isn't he? So he's a shot.
He is a shot. He's a shot if there's a really narrow split on the left. And it is possible. And Nationals polled into the mid to high 30s before. So the maths is possible. And he's got this incredible CV. He's worked around the world in really high-powered legal UN jobs. He was the vice chair of the United Nations Legal Committee when he was 28 years old. So you see that if he finds his way into Parliament, he's a future minister in a future national government, almost certainly.
Do you think, you and I went together, Joel, to the Aro Valley debate, which is always fun, which is always popular. Is there a buzz around the seat beyond that? Are you feeling around town?
I think there is a buzz. I mean, you named that debate, but there have been so many debates. There's a debate almost every night. Like, a lot of seats have a lot of debates, but Wellington's such a political town, and there's so many political organisations here who all want to put on a debate that, like, these candidates are seeing each other and butting heads against each other constantly. There's the same sort of fatigue that you have everywhere else, but almost it also helps that there hasn't been an interesting race in Wellington Central since 1996, arguably.
Yeah, that was a good one.
It was a great one.
Yeah, but hopefully somebody's filming this one. You never know. You never know what could happen. You're quite right, though. The interesting thing about that seat, apart from anything else, is that over the last 3 elections, every one of the parties has, in some election in the party vote, topped 30%. So it shows you how close it is, and it could come down to, in terms of the electorate seat, whether or not if if the Labour and Green candidates, Ibrahim and Tāmaki Makaurau, are close, then that could work for Scott Sheeran, right? Whereas if one bolts away, I mean, has there been any talk of the poll was too close, I suppose, for anyone on the left to say, no, we need to rally behind one candidate?
Oh, I mean, Labour's already trying that line.
Sure.
From what I'm hearing, on the door knocking, they're already pushing that line that people have to get behind Ibrahim because it risks a vote split. Scott Sheeran's also helped by the fact that there's no ACT candidate here this year, so he'll kind of secure that entire right-wing vote. But I've also looked at the analysis of that poll, and we know electorate polls. All polls are a sort of a snapshot, a moment in time, which are not perfectly exact, but you can gain something from. Electorate polls are fuzzier than normal. But, I mean, there has been some analysis of that poll, which maybe is favourable to the Green Party. That poll had Tam on 26%. The Greens got 30% of the party vote last time, and their party vote overall is stronger than it was last time. So it's a little hard to predict. They'll underperform in Wellington Central.
Well, I guess the other thing they're arguing is that because Tāmaki Makaurau is not on the green list, that it's electorate seat or nothing, right? So they can make that case. Although that's true for all of them, right?
That's true for all three of them. Yeah. None of them are gonna be on the list probably. Ibrahim has been a list MP so far, but good chance he doesn't make it back. And Tam is not on the list, although she'll continue to be a council representative. And you've seen that line argued a little bit as well. They say Tam will still be representing you, whereas if you don't vote for Ibrahim, he won't be representing you at all. So I suspect that's going to ramp up a bit more. We saw that ramp up at the end of the campaign in Auckland Central, between Helen White and Chloe Swarbrick arguing about the vote splitting. And so, I would expect to see more of that, particularly
Shanti, you've been in the South Island for the Spinoff. I think Canterbury mostly? What's exciting to you in Christchurch, Canterbury?
Well, the mention of the Wellington Central is quite a good parallel for the Ilam seat, where Raf Manji is really, really hoping to take it for top. The polling does not look that great for him at the moment. But yeah, when I interviewed him in Christchurch a few weeks ago, he sort of said, he's really been talking to people across the political spectrum, including Gaurav Sharma, as it turns out. And he talked to David Seymour, and David Seymour apparently told him that, Top and ACT Top is in the same position that ACT was sort of 6 years ago. And I said, yes, but ACT had someone giving it an electorate seat deal and you don't. And he was like, yeah, but our polling is better. But really very optimistic, very energetic man.
Can you just go back to Gaurav Sharma? What was the conversation with Gaurav Sharma?
It was about being independent, about being an MP. Okay. You get more attention when you're an MP, which is what Top really wants. So
right.
At the moment in Ilam, the current sitting MP is Sarah Pallett from the Labour Party. She's now at a number 51 on the list, so she's not going to get in unless she gets the electorate. And the same goes for Hamish Campbell for the National Party, who's at 63 on the list. So again, we'll need to win the electorate to win. So they're all just very, very dead set on this. And I think Raf Manji is sort of saying, well, it's much better to have a party leader as the representative for your electorate. You get a lot more done. But then the other two are sort of making the argument that it's much better to have backbenchers who will actually do more for the electorate and be more focused on that rather than the overall national profile. So there's kind of quite a lot of different, when you look at the demographics of that area, that's the part of Christchurch, sort of between the university and the airport, for anyone who knows that area. And yeah, lots of mix, lots of social housing, heaps and heaps of students and research. So all of those candidates are really saying, we need the university. Lots of different ways for each of those parties to talk about why it should be their seat. And of course, until Sarah Pallett won in 2020, it was Jerry Brownlee's seat for more than 2 decades.
Safe national seat for a long time.
Very safe national seat, yeah. And Jerry Brownlee was, Cabinet Minister, very well known, very high profile in Christchurch, especially after the earthquakes.
And got knocked out amazingly. I mean, I remember the moment on election night when it was like, holy shit, Jerry Brownlee's going to lose his seat in 2020. And that was the full extent of the red wave lapping up against the bits that you didn't think it was going to reach, right? And so I guess Did the polling remind me? I think there was a Curia poll for Taxpayers Union. Did that put the national candidate top?
Yeah, by quite a big margin. So he had something like 32%.
Yeah.
And then Sarah and Raf were both around 15, 16. Very, very close. But heaps and heaps of undecided voters in that electorate. I did a whole lot of vox pops on the street and basically could not find one single person who would tell me that they knew who they were going to vote for.
Is that right? Interesting.
Yeah. Half of them didn't even know sort of what issues they cared about. So I was like,
I think you said they didn't even know there was an election. Did they know there was an election?
Most of them were, they were like, there's posters for, especially for Top, because they're putting so much of their resources into that electorate, posters for Raf Manji everywhere.
Right.
And his like teal card kind of program, he's really pushing that, wanting, especially around the universities, wanting all the young people to see it. So, lots of the gold card. It's like a gold card, but it's for young people, which doesn't go very much into the details of that policy. But, yeah, he's really trying to push that.
Interesting. And they're now, Raf and Sarah are both with differing degrees of vociferousness trying to encourage supporters of the other to come over to their camp, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. They're sort of... Raf told me that Sarah didn't have a chance and that everyone should vote for him. And Sarah told me that Raf didn't have a chance, everyone should vote for her. So very, very explicit
Well, that's
about
clear. That's
their goals there.
It's good to have it clear around there. I think it's also the seat which is where the Avon River begins in Christchurch. Is that right? So Avon River passes through it, which is only interesting because I think Avon means river in Gaelic, which means that it's the river.
Oh, the river.
I don't know if that's come up as an issue in the campaign.
No one mentioned that to me, but I think that is the boundary of the electorate where it goes against Christchurch Central.
Charlotte, you wrote a beautiful profile of Debbie Ngarewa-Packer for the Spinoff, and travelled down to Pātea and the parts in Taranaki. That seat is pretty interesting. Did you see the poll that came out last night?
I did. I have the numbers written down because I can't remember numbers.
No, you don't expect to remember. Tell us about that seat. That's a Māori seat. Formerly Adrian Rurafe's seat. Currently Adrian Rurafe's seat.
Yeah.
He's the speaker. He's going to the list.
Yes.
Which means?
So there are like 4 really interesting people in the mix there. So you've got Debbie Ngarewa-Packer, Soroya Peke-Mason, Harete Hipango. And then there is another candidate, I can't remember their name, but it's like a Vision New Zealand candidate. Really interesting.
Is it a man who pops up from behind a fence from time to time? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
He's doing them all. He's like a candidate all around the country. So Harete Hipango is running for the National Party, and I mean, I think she's acknowledged that it's really unlikely that she'll win, but she's one of 2 National Party
which is amazing.
Candidates, running in the Māori seats. And she's been quite vocal around getting National to run people in the seats. And then Soroya Peke-Mason is running for Labour, and I think that her cousin is Adrian Rurafe, so she's sort of like hooked into that, and that's very helpful.
Yeah.
And then Debbie Ngarewa-Packer, the co-leader of the Te Pāti Māori, and so Debbie and Soroya are the front runners in that, and it looks to be a really, really close race.
Kia ora, I'm Alex Casey, senior writer at The Spinoff. We wouldn't exist without the ongoing support of our generous members. If you're able to, you can make a donation at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
This is Climate Adaptation.
We are the Pōtiki of the Taiao.
And the words of those keeping the home fires burning.
It's more than just going along and planting some trees. You got to be able to defend that place to the end of your life.
We have the solutions. We just need to come back to the belief in ourselves as rangatira.
Join me, Nadine Hura, and Ruia Āpirehama, the Ko Papa Ko Rangi Series 2, Ahi Ka. Brought to you by Te Komato o Te Tonga, the Deep South Challenge, out now on the Spinoff Podcast Network or wherever you get your podcasts.
One of the other fascinating things about it is that Tariana Turia backed Harete Hipango from the National Party, who's former MP for Wanganui, and she's in the poll numbers that you're about to tell us. You know, that those could be, depending on how things fall, the kind of votes that could come away. And we had Debbie Ngarewa-Packer on this podcast earlier, and she said she said that, yeah, it's true that Tariana said some things about Harete, but she also said, but also the sister's been helping me pass flies around. So it looks like, it's the nature. Of course, Tariana Turia is enormous mana in the area and in the seat, and as the founder of the Māori Party. Is it? I wonder whether it's almost, if Tariana decided to back Te Bingaru Peka, whether that would make the difference. Is that the sense you get? Does she have that kind of...
Maybe, but she sort of, I think she's from that kind of past era of Te Pāti Māori or the Māori Party, and so I don't know whether that kind of would push people in a certain way these days. I don't know. I think she's still got, all of that mana, and she's done such incredible things, but yeah, I do wonder whether she is of the old. She's also Harete's cousin, I think. So
right.
Yeah, that probably plays.
Tell us how the poll numbers look.
Okay, so Soroya's on. So that's the Labour candidate. She's on 34%. Debbie Ngarewa-Paka from Te Pāti Māori is on 29%, and then Harete from National is on 12%. But then there's 16% undecided. So there's just 5% between the two front runners and 16% undecided. So,
and it bears repeating. We talked about this earlier with Annabelle, that polling the Māori electorates is hell of a hard. This is a Curia poll, so it's a reputable polling agency, but it's hell of a hard, and all of the different kind of demographic balancing that has to be done across such a massive strip of country is tricky. So it's close, is what we know, right?
Very close.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting one. Stewart, you've been travelling around Auckland quite a bit, looking at seats. Auckland Central, we had a debate in here earlier, so let's leave Auckland Central for the time being.
Maungakiekie, perhaps?
Maungakiekie. Did you go to a Maungakiekie debate the other night?
Yeah, sort of meet the candidates / debate event.
You left a message in our Slack saying that there were only 2 people in the audience at one point. Did that improve?
Yeah, that was my error. I had actually... So the Facebook event said it started at 7, so I was there at 6:58. Right. There was me and one other person, and then I was politely told there was going to be an Ellerslie Residents Association annual general meeting that I had to sit through for the next half an hour before the debate started, but I was welcome to stay. I could apply...
Did you not? Did you? I hope you stayed.
I stayed, yeah, I did. Of course I did. Sat there. I put my name in the drawer for a $50 Danny Doolan's voucher.
2,000 words.
And there was a raffle to win a fridge, and then I had to sit through and be told about the state of the books for the Ellerslie.
Come on, people want to know how are the books?
Okay? They're doing well. They said after it's been a tough time with COVID, they've had to. This is a 2-year AGM. They had to make up for lost ground because of COVID, but they're happy. They're happy with the state of the books. Brand new football venue. It's great time in Ellerslie. So then eventually...
This is your home turf, isn't it?
Yeah, Ellerslie?
It is. So you went, there was sort of some interest to you.
Yeah, I would have, because at first I thought, well, it'd be a bit bad if the journo turns up and wins the Danny Doolan's voucher, but then I believe a sitting ACT MP won it, so I think it's fine.
Right.
Simon Court just turned up, so I believe he won it.
Is that allowed? Is that a scandal?
No, I decided that they're probably... I mean, I'm dropping it now. This is an exclusive. Okay. But yes, it's him or someone associated with him.
Has he read a book? Did you find out he's read a book?
Look, I would like to say he probably has read books, and he probably does have high levels of mojo. That's my take.
And who's in the Maungakiekie running? Who's going to?
It's a sort of 2-horse race between sitting MP and Minister Priyanka Radhakrishnan and National List candidate Greg Fleming. There were also Green and ACT candidates there, but they made it very clear from the outset they were just there to campaign for the party vote. So there's no chance there. But Maungakiekie is a sort of traditionally, or maybe not traditionally, but for a while there was a pretty safe blue seat, and obviously it flipped red as a lot of seats did, but it wouldn't be surprising if it went back. And Greg Fleming is a pretty fierce candidate on the campaign trail, but obviously comes with a little bit of baggage that may or may not influence voters at all in terms of his historic comments that he made.
Sort of Christian conservative comments.
Yeah, about homosexual law reform.
Stuff.
Yeah.
And that seat, I mean, he's favourite, right? Because I'm just looking it up. There was the majority was 635 in 2020. with Denise Lee, then the candidate for National. So Greg Fleming is probably going to be an MP if
and he's pretty far down the list,
shifts.
so it's sort of that's his one bet. And I haven't done extensive on the ground chats, but living in the electorate and talking to a lot of people, there seems to be this this idea, which does happen when the sitting MP is also a minister. They become busy, they don't get to spend too much time in the electorate. So there's a bit of a perception that Priyanka hasn't been as active in the community as some people would have liked, and Greg, as with a lot of national candidates, this electorate are spending a lot of time on the ground, dragging Luxon around jewellers and supermarkets and stuff to try and get a bit of airtime. So yeah, he's the favourite, and he's got to win it to get into Parliament. Also at that candidates event, a sort of fringe candidate for Rock the Vote NZ turned up unannounced, and stood up during the Q&A and made quite a bold claim, which is that Priyanka's already going to get on off the list, so why don't you vote for me instead? And then everyone started to laugh, and he sat down, and that was all we heard from him. So quite a peaceful protest.
What about Northcote? Have you looked much at Northcote? Because Annabelle Lee Mather was talking this morning about it, and it's reached the point in the day now whether I can't remember it was on the podcast or before the podcast, but she said that, Shannon Halbert is the MP there with a majority of 2,500 over Dan Bidois, and so you would expect Dan Bidois to win, but she said that there had been some murmurings that actually it might be close. What's your perception of that seat? That's two quite interesting young Māori men, youngish.
Yeah.
They've both got quite fancy CVs from, I don't know what, fancy Ivy League university stuff. What's your read on Northcote?
I think Bidois got is the front runner, but I think there's a possibility it could be close as well. I guess what makes it interesting for me is seeing Shannon Halbert's been dragged into quite a few sort of mini scandals recently in terms of advertisements in the electorate.
Oh, yeah, and putting stuff up on his Facebook page, which is not true.
It ends up meaning that the Prime Minister or Labour leader, as he is at the moment, spends quite a lot of time during press conferences where he's meant to be talking about policies, ending up talking about his own candidates, and that's happened a couple of times for Shannon Halbert, whereas Dan Bidois has been out on the campaign a lot. I mean, so is Shannon Halbert, to be fair, but he's sort of, there seems to be a bit of momentum, is my observation, from having just been to a couple of events where Chris Luxon's been wandering around in the area. He was at that was where they launched the sort of Get the Country Back on Track tour, or whatever it was called. That was in Birkenhead.
Bowling Club.
Yeah, great day it was. And so, yeah, I think it could be closer than people may suspect, but it feels like it feels like it could be a change.
Joel, what about Rongotai? The Julianne Genter is standing for the Greens, and the Greens have been arguing that it's in play too. This is, of course, was Paul Eagle's seat, and Paul Eagle ran for the mayoralty, and that did not work out for him at all. And then he is standing down from Parliament. He's going to be the CEO of Chatham Islands, another area of interest for you, Shanti, the Chatham Islands.
Yep. And he's going to love it, and they're going to love him.
Is he?
I
Is that
feel
right?
convinced
Well,
of this.
it's like a match made in heaven.
Yeah.
Very personable fellow, Paul Eagle. Did not campaign well for the Wellington mayoralty. What's my question for you, Joel? My question is your sense that Rongotai is in play?
My sense is that Rongotai is in less play than Wellington Central is. I see it being possible if there is a significant green wave. If Wellington Central is taken, there'll be I think there's a certain carryover, that there are seats that have a lot of spillover. A lot of people sort of, they're right next to each other. People come and go. People have connections to both of them. I think Labour has a much stronger chance of holding Rongotai. Fleur Fitzsimmons is the candidate there. She's campaigning really well. She's really respected on the ground. She was arguably the most high profile and most competent councillor on Wellington City Council. And so she has that sort of connection to community aspect. Like Julianne Genter has a really high profile, but she hasn't been a local representative before. So I think when it sort of comes to those, that ground game stuff that you need, I think Fleur stands a stronger chance, but I think if Julianne does take it, it's due to a wider sort of national trend that sort of carries her on a wave.
What about up the road a bit, Hutt South? That's an interesting. That's been a tense one for a long time. It's Mallard's old seat. Currently, Ginny Anderson, who's been handed a bunch of portfolios late in the term, is defending it against Chris Bishop, who is a quite prominent and garrulous national MP. Among other things, he's the chair of the campaign and a champion debater, not to be forgotten. He's got to be the favourite to win that, just in terms of the way the swing's likely to work.
I think you're right. I think last time in 2020, Bishop outperformed. This is really significant how much he outperformed his own party vote. He got 41.6% of the electorate vote when National got 22% of the party vote.
Right.
That's a huge overperformance, and Ginny Anderson underperformed Labour by about 5%. I think in that one term, since she's held the seat, Ginny has developed a good reputation. She's well respected on the ground. She's had these high profile portfolios. But Chris Bishop is kind of that, he's such a electorate guy, and he's such a Hutt South guy, and people always say here, he does the classic show up to the opening of an envelope. So I think he will. I think he has everything. Everything's there for him to take the seat back. Funnily, I was actually at both of their campaign parties last election, and Ginny Anderson didn't believe that she'd won it at first. She had to, the final count from the ballot box had come in, and her staffers were telling her she'd won it, and there were a couple of media there. We were trying to get responses from her, and she kind of wouldn't give response because she almost didn't quite believe it yet, and didn't want to accidentally jump it. And then Chris Bishop was just the most despondent you've ever seen him. I think he really thought he was, going to win that seat, and then. Obviously, every National Party event around the country was not a fun affair last time because they underperformed so much. But you tell there was so much hope in that room that he would just cling on, and he fell just short.
Did he? So not just short. Ginny Anderson won by 3,700 votes in the end. That's a big majority.
Yeah. Well, she won by a significant majority. I guess I'm thinking
it probably picked up on specials too. But then Bishop beat Anderson in 2017 by 1,500. So it looks like it could be turning into a bit of a bellwether seat for the mood of the country. There's a lot of Hutt South that is reasonably middle New Zealand type stock, I imagine.
I think you're right about that. It's a good bellwether, and it's kind of probably quite a good reflection of that sort of median voter, because it's suburban, it's near the city, but it's out of the city. It's not sort of its house prices are getting more expensive, but you can still sort of buy around there. It kind of sits on that. It kind of represents that urban, rural sort of middle. So I think it is a really good one to watch to get the sense of sort of the nation's mood.
Charlotte, what can you tell me about Hauraki Waikato?
Well, this is also personal, because if my mum hadn't have moved to Auckland, urban drift, I would have been voting in this seat, so also of interest to me. So that's the kind of electorate that neighbours Tāmaki Makaurau, so it's down through the Waikato and then up through the Coromandel as well. And you've got Nanaia Mahuta for Labour, who currently holds the seat, against Hana Rāwhiti from Te Pāti Māori. And it's interesting. I don't see Hana Rāwhiti necessarily winning. She might. But Nanaia has held that seat for since the seat first existed, which was before Hana was even born. Hana's 20 years old. Nanai's been doing this since the 1990s. Yeah. She's from like the family. Her dad's Rob Mahuta. Her cousin is King Ituheitia, the Māori king, and she's been like a stable figure in that seat for decades. So I guess I think it's interesting because it will be interesting to see how well Hana does. I don't know, I kind of get a sense that for those Te Pāti Māori candidates, it will be I think there'll be a whole lot of momentum both coming from the fact that there's this sort of narrative of trouble brewing in the Māori caucus and Labour, and, people leaving and kind of maybe a feeling that, or a question mark around how much they can actually get done when you're kind of sitting under the Labour brand. But then on the other side, I think that the rhetoric from the right bloc for Māori is probably kind of, I don't know, it maybe is a bit worrying, and so that kind of just might build a bit of excitement about voting for something new, really.
And Nanaia is not on the list, right? Like she opted not to go on the list, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Whereas Hana Rafiti Maipi Clark is on 4th spot on Te Pāti Māori, which, the way they've been polling for the last year or so, she's in.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
She'll be the
20 years old.
youngest MP in, century?
Well, if I recall correctly, he said, opening up the article on his phone, she'd be the youngest MP in the New Zealand Parliament since 1853, when James Frederick Stewart Wortley, James Frederick Stewart Wortley, a colonist who spent just a few years in New Zealand, was elected at the age of 20 years and 7 months. Wow. The other thing about him, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I was doing some reading around it. I think he was illegally elected because you had to be 21 years old to vote and to stand at that point. But he obviously, forged his birth certificate or whatever you do when you're kicking around in 1853 and got himself elected to Parliament.
Wow.
Cheeky bugger. And then he fucked off back to Britain quite shortly afterwards.
So did he actually get to... When did they find out that he wasn't?
No, I don't know if they did find out.
Right.
I don't know if they did find out. This was an extensive bit of about 20 minutes research a couple of months ago.
What's happened to the Wortley family these days? There's no Wortleys running.
There were lots of. I think his dad was a Tory MP, and I think there's quite in the UK. So I think there's quite a few Wortleys still kicking around.
Wow.
Probably several hundred of them in the House of Lords these days. It's actually bulging at the seams. Can't move for the Wortleys. Full of mojo, Wortleys. Lots of mojo. Lots of mojo. Shanti, back to the South Island. You're going to Dunedin soon, aren't you?
Yeah,
so
tomorrow morning.
You're going to go and see if you can find Michael Woodhouse. Is he?
Yeah,
is he out there campaigning?
Allegedly, he's going to be appearing at a debates. I'm going to go to the Otago University debating debate with the local MPs. So it'll be I'll spot him there if nowhere else.
Okay, that'll be fun. Dunedin doesn't have really a lot of kind of swing seats at the moment, really, in it.
No.
I mean, someone pointed out, maybe it was Michael Woodhouse, that it is because he's not returning after being frustrated, getting the pip, whatever you like, about his list placing. It means that I don't know that there will be a national MP in Dunedin, and I think there's it's one of the advantages of the MMP system is that you can have list MPs representing parts of the country where they generally have a bunch of seats in one direction. But let me ask you, if we just travel north up the island a bit, about Rangitata.
Yes.
That's an interesting seat.
Yes, it is. Currently held by Labour's Joe Luxton, who's became a minister in May. And that's from Ashburton to Timaru. So quite a, from Rakaia to Timaru. So really huge section of country. The frequent refrain of people saying, we haven't seen her much in this electorate, in this area. There's a bit of, you hear that, I think you hear that a lot. It's also a massive area. Sort of lots to, I'm not sure how much that is always like the fairest thing to say, but there is a bit of frustration there. And there was sort of quite interesting talking to both her and James Miega, who is standing for National, about the emissions trading scheme and the farmers' big farming area, big agricultural kind of hub, and Both of them were like, yeah, we really back our farmers. We're the best farmers in the world, as you might expect. But how do you support farmers? And climate change is a really big deal in that area. It's quite vulnerable to transport things. There's these huge rivers going down, so snow melt can impact how big the rivers are. And then there's been Ashburton floods in, I think, 2021, which covered huge amounts took out lots of bridges, covered farms with silt. So there's quite a lot of kind of climate anxiety, but it doesn't seem like it's really what the electorate is interested in, even though both the National and Labour candidate were really happy to talk about why their version of climate change response was going to be the best.
It's interesting as well because it is, the majority there for Joe Luxton is 4,400, looking at my spreadsheet here, and that sort of seems like the kind of number where probably, depending on where the swing sits across the country, and it's similar in Nelson actually as well. I don't know how much you've been looking at Nelson, Shanti. I know you've done some research there before, but Rachel Boyack there is probably also in that position where I've heard some people say they think she'll hold on to it, that she's got to, but equally, it's not a sure thing, right? With the majority
no, totally not. And Joe Luxton definitely seems to have a bit of her ministerial responsibilities seem to be taking up quite a lot of space for her. I think there was interesting to kind of see that small majority. Apparently, the national candidate told me that it has the biggest number of national members of any electorate in the country. So huge amounts of volunteers sort of out there driving up and down the roads, knocking on doors, observing the potholes. I'm sure you can imagine the scenes.
No pothole uninvestigated. Hey, Joel, come in Wellington Bureau.
Hello,
Joel.
Toby.
Have you been looking through this Ipsos Issues Monitor? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know you're going to have a look at it. The Ipsos Issues Monitor came out this morning, which is this sort of 3 times a year study of the issues that New Zealand voters consider the most important to them. Have you looked at that today?
Yes, I have.
What's the story?
Oh, I mean, the big story that sort of stands out is the issues at the top of the list haven't changed a lot from the last couple of ones. We're still seeing inflation, crime, inflation by far first, crime second, housing. But what the really significant thing that changed is on the question where they asked which political party do you consider most capable of managing each issue. It's blue. Like Labour, Labour, normally doesn't take, for example, the economy, the crime ones, but they, in June they had healthcare and they had education. They don't have those anymore. They don't have public transport.
You would expect those to be red. You would expect those on the board to light up red,
They're their home turf, right? When they've lost those, it's not looking good.
And there was another figure in there too, that they look at the government's performance. They ask people to rate the government's performance. And this poll's only been going since 2018. It's really interesting, sort of different lens on things. But I think it was the lowest yet for the government's performance rating, which is, again, going to make sobering reading for the Labour Party.
Yeah, it was. I find this poll really interesting. It's kind of the only poll that does approval ratings of government. This particular question, we're so used to asking which party will you vote for, but this is just really, are you happy with the government or not? We saw big spikes after March 15, after the first lockdown, and it's just been this downward trend since. And it looked for a while like Chris Hipkins had sort of stemmed the bleeding.
Right.
But no, it's fallen off a cliff again. It's got to be tough reading for Labour.
Joel, thank you for that. Are you writing about that? Could people read about that on thespinoff.co.nz?
They can read about it on thespinoff.co.nz right now.
Exciting. Other things you can read on thespinoff.co.nz by Stewart and Shanti and Charlotte, who have been doing really tremendous writing, feature writing, seat summaries. The 4 people in here have just been having blinders of elections, so get onto the website and read their work. Thanks you guys so much for coming in and talking about seats. Next hour on the Megapod, we are going to talk to Brooke Van Velden from the ACT Party. Stewart mentioned her before. She's running in Tāmaki against Simon O'Connor. And we're also going to talk to Ben Mackay, the swashbuckling Australian journalist in the press gallery. We'll be back soon on Spinoff. Gone by Lunchtime, Election 2023, Megapod. Thanks for listening. There's plenty more where this came from on your Gone By Lunchtime feed. Thanks to Jane, Te Aihe and Samuel and the rest of the team at the Spinoff for making the Megapod happen.
Do you find it hard staying optimistic with all the financial news in the media? I'm Bernard Hickey, and on my podcast, When the Facts Change, I'm here to help you navigate the ever-changing landscape of economics in Aotearoa. So join the conversation every Friday on When the Facts Change, brought to you by the Spinoff Podcast Network in partnership with KiwiBet.
Kia ora e te iwi, Te Aihe Butler here, podcast manager at the Spinoff. If you enjoy listening to our podcasts, consider supporting our mahi by signing up to become a Spinoff member at thespinoff.co.nz/donate. The Spinoff Podcast Network.